All right, everybody, welcome back to the Abundance Formula podcast. I'm so excited to have Jordan Thomas on today. He is from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Is that correct? Or you
That's
lived
right.
here?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chattanooga native, and he's done some amazing things. He's going to tell you his backstory here in a minute, but I'm so excited to have him on. He's doing really amazing things in the world. So thanks so much for making time for us today, Jordan.
Oh, totally. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, with that, go ahead and tell everybody who you are and your backstory and how you've kind of arrived at where you are today.
Sure. So yeah, my name's Jordan Thomas. I'm 35 years old. I grew up in Chattanooga, and I now live in Nashville. But why I'm here, I mean, my life took a pretty clear kind of turn instantaneously as a 16-year-old. I got onto a boat as a fully able-bodied kid. I came off that boat with a disability that I'll live with for the rest of my life. So in an instant, the trajectory of my life changed, the purpose of my life changed, and um, as I was in the recovery process, I learned more and more about kids and prosthetics and how prosthetics are prohibitively expensive for most families. And for me as a 16-year-old, that was just an unacceptable reality. I knew that I would have the luxury of having access to the best prosthetic care imaginable to get back to doing the things that I love to do: play golf, ski, be active. And when I learned that kids are denied that access to prosthetics, that again was just an unacceptable reality for me.
Hmm.
And so I started a foundation in the hospital, and we provide prosthetic devices to kids until they reach 18. We've grown. We have 140 kids that we serve now that we'll support until adulthood. And we're doing a whole host of things like beyond just prosthetic coverage. So it's pretty amazing work. It's clearly why I'm on the earth, is to do the work that I get to do every day, and just feel really blessed to be able to do what I do.
Hmm. So going back to your accident, so in that you had the boating accident and you lost both your legs below the knee, correct?
That's right.
So with something that's as, such a 180 as that to like, okay, life was one way before. In fact, I've had multiple amputees on the podcast, but you're only actually the second one I've had that acquired the amputation, which is a completely different way of approaching life. It's one thing, there's challenges when that's what you were born with. It's not, you don't know any different, but you knew life in a different way. So
Yeah.
how did you in your mindset approach this journey of how you're going to do life differently and making that choice you're going to do it better even because of this incident?
Well, I mean, I think it is important to acknowledge the privilege that I had, right? From that basis, I knew that I would have access to the best care possible. So
Hmm.
that made it infinitely, I think, maybe easier for me, not to discredit what I went through, but when because I get to face the brutal reality so often, but for of kids that can't afford prosthetic devices and what that outcome looks like.
Hmm.
For me, it was just I was so determined to get back. I was an athlete. I've always been an athlete, and I just recognized when you recognize at age 16, at a time when I felt utterly invincible and that like nothing could touch me.
Hmm.
So to awaken to that reality of like, wow, I'm very much vulnerable here. What a gift this thing is. And I've really tried to do that. And I think as a kid, I was blessed to have been kind of just thrown into the fire in some ways to be like, golly, there's so much we have to be grateful for, like truly so much to be grateful for. So it was like this combination of like sheer determination, like I was going to make it back, and then just a lot of gratitude, and then a lot of support, a lot of community around me, a lot of people that were willing to lend a hand, and yeah, that made it a whole lot easier, that transition.
Hmm. And how do you kind of help encourage those who, like, being an athlete, you were already someone that was quite self-confident, you'd had a lot of successes, you knew you had a good support system, but for maybe those that feel like they don't have those things, or maybe they're not quite as confident, but they're trying to get back up on their feet and know, especially if they are given some sort of prosthetic to utilize, like what do you do to kind of help encourage all the people that you run into, like, okay, you can create a new abundant life. Let's move forward. How do you help people through that kind of thought process?
Yeah, I think, for me, first and foremost, I love this notion that comparison is the great thief of joy, and that
Hmm.
like I always, no matter what, I always find myself when I'm in the comparison game, like ending up on the short end of that, right? So I think for me, it's about, we don't know people's stories, so it's about like, I think gaining real clarity around like what is it that's really important to you, what do you want to do, and what do we need to do, like really pragmatic approach in a lot
Hmm.
of ways. What is it that matters to you, what's important to you, and then I think also this idea of challenging the idea of how many people you think you may have in your corner. I
Hmm.
would say that we as like a species always underestimate the amount of people that are rooting for us and that are
Hmm.
willing to help us. So for me, it took a real sense of humility to be like, will you help me with this? Because I wasn't hard-headed 16-year-old athlete, not the most willing to ask for help when they needed it, right? So for me, I think that's something that I didn't necessarily have down pat like after my accident, but it's something I encourage people, ask for help, allow people to help you, give them the gift to be able to help you and be of service to you. I think that's something that I really try to hammer home. I do not try to hammer home the like, aren't you lucky to be alive spiel.
Right.
I don't do that,
Yeah. No,
you know?
exactly. I think that's a really cool answer. And that was kind of something I was going to ask was like, did you through this journey, did you learn anything new about yourself or just some new skill sets that otherwise you might not have had to learn, which it sounds like that was one of them, like ask for help. There's more people in your corner than you thought. You can't do it all alone and more people are willing to be there. I think that's really awesome. Is there any other things that you kind of learned that you hadn't known about yourself before?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was that thing of I had no idea what was within and what I was capable of until I was confronted with like having to call upon that.
Mhm.
I didn't know that I had that thing
Mhm.
that was revealed to me. And it was like, in a way, that's the whole thing of like, in retrospect, in hindsight, in real time, I have no idea what's good or bad for me. Like, I
Right.
truly believe that. I'm quick to make a judgment. Oh, this is great. Oh, this sucks. But if I look back on it, my accident absolutely was a really just like taking it objectively, like was such a gift for me in my life in terms of the opportunities it's given me, the ways that I've been able to impact people's life, and the purpose it's given me. Um, but it's yeah. So to your question, sorry that was a tangent, but
No.
like it showed me like what like that I'm way more resilient than I thought I was. It
Mhm.
showed me the value of community, of asking for support. Um, and it showed me a pretty good like formula for how to get out of my own stuff. Like my
Mm.
journey wasn't this like really great linear path of like, oh, I started Foundation for Kids and like give them prosthetic devices and my life is swell. Like, no, there were parts of my life that were really difficult and sucked. But I got to draw on like the experience, the resiliency that I experienced as a kid. Um, and I got to ask for a lot of help, you know? So like I feel like often my story is portrayed as like this really great inspirational story. It is an inspirational story, but that doesn't mean that it was all sunshine and puppy dogs. So
Right.
that's like would be the big thing to like a lot of your listeners, I think, is like my journey was my journey and your journey is your journey and your experience is okay wherever you are. And like,
Mhm.
okay, you know?
Yes. And I think it's great for people to hear and that's one of the things I like to highlight on the podcast is that part of that abundance formula is the fact that it's really those really hard parts of the journey that made the whole thing abundant at the end of the day or have value in the first place or even matter to people in the first place. And so when they're in their struggle period, you're not in the wrong place. Like you're doing the right thing. That's what all these other people that you see, in these little success points that are highlighted,
Yeah.
that you're not doing something wrong that they didn't do or experience. Like in their own different way, everybody else hit their different versions of rock bottom as well, but they kept going. And that
Yeah.
was the big difference between them coming out on the highlight reel versus those that don't. And so for them just hearing these stories of people like, oh wow, okay, there were really rough patches. It wasn't all sunshine and roses.
Right.
Okay, cool. I'm not just doing something completely wrong and I'm not meant to be here or pursue this thing or whatever. So that is encouraging for people to know.
Yeah. And it's the counterpoint. The counterpoint is equally as helpful at times to give a frame
Hmm.
of reference. Like with the abundance thing, the only way that I know what true abundance is when I've lived in a place of true lack or
Mm.
vice versa. Like I've been able to experience the upside and joy and fulfillment and gratitude of life because I've experienced the really, really, really dark, bad, lonely, painful times. And it
Hmm.
gives it that much more meaning, I think.
Right.
You know?
Yes, Amen. That's so true. Well, so going back to how you're starting this foundation, what did that look like? So you're 16.
Mm.
Obviously, you'd never done that before. Like, what did it look like to even get it started? What did you do? Because I know there are some people that have their different passions and they have no clue where to start. What did you do to kind of get started?
Yeah, well, the most important thing was that it was made very human to me. It wasn't just a theory or a concept. It was like I met a kid that didn't have access to devices and was in a wheelchair. And so for me, it was like the purpose was born there with that one singular 7-year-old named Larry in Miami, Florida in 2005. So it was very human to me, and I was living it. I asked for a lot of help from a lot of people and said, "Hey, this is what I want to do. This is the vision. This is the passion. Will you help me to do it?" And they said yes. But before that, and this is an important, like, this is one that I'm passionate about, is I looked into the space and I said, who's doing this well now? Like, who in the nonprofit world is addressing this? What agencies, like, who's addressing this? And there wasn't anyone. But now it's almost like in vogue to start a nonprofit, right? Like everyone's like,
Hmm.
oh, I want to start a nonprofit. And I'm always like, don't. More likely than not, there's a wonderful organization that does this really, really well.
Hmm.
I think we're guilty in the nonprofit world of just like we're reactionary. It's like we're really passionate about helping X cause, and then the lights turn off and everyone goes somewhere else. You know, we have short attention span. So, yeah, I asked for a lot of help, made it very personal, and I lived it.
Hmm. And I think people, like you said earlier, you kind of you're not projecting too far for it. Like, I think this is something people need a lot of help with, and I know I get a lot of questions of this, like in my DMs and just whatever. Is people have a problem with how to really set goals, because you got the far off dream, but it can be
Yeah.
so big that then you just don't get started because you don't know all of the next steps. Like, you just have to do the next thing you think is okay and see where that leads. So what are sort of your goal setting tips for people? So you've got your big dream down the road, but how far not to look, because sometimes that's not what you need to do, and how short to kind of look.
Well, I may not be the best to ask, right? I'm that classic like founder visionary type that just gets uber like I just throw out unrealistic stuff all the time to like my team, right? Like
Yeah.
what if we just eliminated all need for prosthetics for kids? Like every single, like I said, I'm kind
Right.
of that like wishful dreaming type person. But I do like in my own personal life, for me, it's like yeah, I always back into stuff. It's like it's the 10-year goal, 5-year goal, 1-year goal. What do I need to do today? And ultimately, it always comes down to like, what's the next thing in front of me that I can do that will help move the ball and advance the ball towards where I want to go.
Right.
So it's like, and then celebrating those wins too. Like it's not all, they're not all massive wins with like pyrotechnics. Like celebrating those really small wins of like, I did this small stuff that didn't necessarily like isn't a big earth moving like thing, but I like did 5 really good small things today or
Hmm.
this month or this quarter. And I think that's important. I think we get really stuck on like, I'm not seeing results or I haven't done X, Y, and Z, or I haven't gotten the acknowledgement from my boss about whatever it is, like for whoever's
Hmm.
circumstances. Like, I think we gotta like celebrate the small wins. Like give ourselves a little grace and be like, today I just like didn't have it. But like I'm pretty sure I will tomorrow.
Right.
Like that's the thing for me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, yeah,
Well, yeah, I think that's so true. And you being an avid golfer, it's kind of like, the only way to know how the game can turn out is to play the game. Like,
go play.
you can just, you got to start on the tee, and then you hit that ball, you hope you hit it good, but depending on where it lands, now you got to play where it lands. And so
Yeah.
you just can't keep projecting, well, it's going to go here, it's going to go there, and then I'll do this and do that. Like, you literally just got to keep hitting the next shot that
Yeah.
you see in front of you and follow the next path. Like, and so I think
Yeah.
people make it too complicated, the pursuit of the dream. They need to just look at it a little more simply and take some of that pressure off. Like you're saying, it's just, and what's cool too is you might think the dream would be one place, and then really you get shifted to a place that you couldn't have dreamed of in the first place. Did that happen at all in this progress of you reaching where you are today, as far as maybe you had a vision of it being in a certain way, but it shifted a little bit, but it's turned out like you're glad it went this way?
Yeah, let me finish that last point. Like, listen, like
Yeah.
I'm not like a sailor. I don't sail or anything, but like there's this saying that I've always been told of like if a sailboat is stuck in the middle of a body of water and there's no wind, and if the wind's not blowing west and you're trying to go west, they say you just start sailing. Even if it's to the east, you just go, and then you can tack back to where you're going. Like, I love
Mm-hmm.
that idea. That's a big one for
Yeah.
me, because I'll get stuck in paralysis from analysis. I'll get so stuck in analyzing and trying to figure out and catastrophizing and being like, oh shit, like last time I did that,
Yeah.
like it went all wrong. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, you just go, you just move. But has this thing gone somewhere where I didn't expect it, the foundation? Or was that the question?
Yes.
Oh, uh, I mean, it certainly has taken me to places I never expected. The foundation, yeah, has definitely gone in places because what's interesting now is it's next year is going to be 20 years, which is crazy to think it's been 20 years
Mm-hmm.
since my accident. But I think that for us as an organization, it's grown in terms of what we're doing to support kids and families beyond just prosthetic care. We're doing scholarships now and mentorship programs, and we're doing community-based mental health stuff. And so yeah, it's definitely developed and gotten like way bigger than I ever expected.
That's so cool. Yeah. So go ahead
Yeah.
and tell everyone about the foundation. So it's called the Jordan Thomas Foundation. And so tell them kind of how it works, how you get involved, whether that's as the amputee that needs help or and about some of these different things.
Yeah, so it's called the Jordan Thomas Foundation, jordanthomasfoundation.org, and we're committed to serving child amputees, living kids with limb loss or limb difference, with the prosthetic care that they need until they reach adulthood. So, like it's kids maybe get a year, 8 months, 12 months. They're growing so quickly. Um, we often liken it to shoes. Kids are just outgrowing shoes so quickly. So there's a lot of financial needs that families have if they're uninsured, but even if they do have insurance, prosthetic coverage for stuff like activity limbs, for running
Hmm.
blades, for example,
Yep.
will never be covered. So families are coming out of pocket to give their kid the ability to run, and that's when we step in as an organization, as we say, that's an unreasonable burden for a family to go through. Certainly unreasonable to go through, financially, but also emotionally, psychologically. So if you're a kid or a family or know of a family, reach out to us directly, jordanthomasfoundation.org. If you're feeling generous and want to donate and support what we do, same place, jordanthomasfoundation.org. And we'll take anybody and everybody. So,
Hmm.
anybody that wants to support, that's passionate about this, it's really a gift for us that we have. Is it's so visible. We get to show our kids running and climbing and jumping. And there are a lot of great causes out there in the world that need funding, of course, but it's not a black hole. We're not saying like, can you fund this research that'll take place in some dark
Right.
lab somewhere? It's
Hmm.
here's a kid that's doesn't have the ability to run or ride his bike now, and then here's literally 5 days later, this kid
Hmm.
riding his bike. So from like an impact standpoint, we're really lucky that we get to just tell their stories.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so tangible. That's one thing I loved about being a prosthetist. It's like, you truly got to be a part of the whole journey from start when
Yeah,
they come in the wheelchair and they're not walking and
yeah,
it seems so impossible and then they leave walking out and then especially with children it's my favorite because then they're getting bigger and they're running in and they're jumping in and they're getting as tall as you and all the thing and it's like just so cool to see the transformation. It's very fulfilling. It's just so fulfilling to be a part of. And I know love people, especially when giving, love seeing something tangible with what they are giving. And it's so tangible and it's like addictive to be like, oh my gosh, I love that I was able to be a part of that. So I
yeah.
know that's one thing that people really do resonate with. And one thing I think is really cool about your foundation that is different from others is that you do provide the legs for up till you said 18. That's really cool because a lot of them
Yeah.
don't. It's like you do it and you fill out all the application stuff and they'll get a leg. But like you said, for kids especially, it's like, well, here's a pair of shoes. That's great. But then, so that's just huge.
Yeah.
And kind of the first one that I've heard that does that, and I think that's amazing.
And I always like, no shade, but I always want to talk to those other nonprofits, be like, so like, what do you say when they apply like 8 months later? And you just
Right.
say, like, sorry, like I hope you
You,
enjoyed the
you
opportunity
got
to run
one.
for 8 months. Like, that must have been fun for you.
Yeah.
Like
I know. Yeah.
crickets, like what?
I'm glad you made the track team, but
Yeah,
now,
next year go knit.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
what?
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I am. I'm really, of all the things I'm most proud of, I'm proud of a lot of things we do at JTF, but I would say the long-term commitment that we make to our kids and our families, because
Hmm.
we've had kids that have taken the first step of their life with with a prosthetic from the foundation,
Mm-hmm.
and we've had them walk across a high school graduation stage. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's like, that's unbelievable. So you get to know these kids, you get to know these families, and
Mm-hmm.
it's way more than just like, oh, they're a recipient. It's like, no, they're a part of our
Right.
family.
Right. And I think that's even so cool for them because that's one of the things I'm sure, as you can say, like you're looking for when you become an amputee, or even if you were born without that, it's like you're trying to find also this community. And besides, and so there it is, not only built in, you can get to know everybody else and you can be part of the events you do in the golf tournaments, and you start to truly make this additional family. And I think it just helps to grow everything together because you really become a family as opposed to just this one and done thing. So I think that's really cool. Can you tell us, because I know you've done some stuff on Capitol Hill and whatnot, like where is everything at in this process? I know at my Georgia conference for my Georgia license, they were talking about, I think Georgia was getting close to passing something about insurance is covering more, at least for children. I mean, everyone deserves it too. Again, you don't just, no adult even wears one pair of shoes, right? Or so, but they were working on it. So where are things at, and how can everyone listening help get the ball rolling any faster, or can we, like, what's going on as far as why
Yeah.
this is the way it is?
So it's been a little bit. So I've done some work on Capitol Hill on the federal level. Really, ultimately, this is going to come down to a state level issue, and
Mm-hmm.
I've done some work here in the state of Tennessee around the entire limb loss community. And the reality is, like, Medicare, Medicaid, like, they cover prosthetics really well. Private insurers, for whatever reason, do not. Well, the whatever reason being they stand to lose a lot of money if they pay for like baseline prosthetic devices. We're not talking about like big time expensive
Mm-hmm.
prosthetic devices. So really, a lot of the legislation has been around. It's called insurance fairness, about holding private insurance companies accountable and ensuring that they're covering prosthetic devices to the same extent that the government already is. So we're not asking for a lot, and ultimately that cost comes down to like very minimal, probably about 3 cents per payer per month increase in premiums. I can throw an extra nickel to Cigna once a month to get prosthetic devices. I'm cool with that. Like, I'll do that, Senator. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So but it's an uphill battle. It's a battle, especially on the state level here in Tennessee. It's been a battle,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay, is what it is. But there's been what's amazing. What I'm really excited about are there have been several states. I forget what it is now, but about 8 states that have passed legislation to ensure that kids do get those secondary
Right.
devices that we're talking about, like the
Mm-hmm.
running blades, the swimming legs,
Right.
whatever. And like that for me is where I'm really passionate. And
Mm-hmm.
probably this next session of the Tennessee legislature is really looking at that policy that's been passed elsewhere and seeing what we can do here in Tennessee. Um, it's a common sense thing. It's about reaching out to legislators and saying, hey, this is an issue. In all likelihood, you're not aware of this. Um, when you lay the story out, both from like a heart standpoint, like this is common sense, kids deserve
Mm-hmm.
access. And then financially, like the fiscal element of it just is so small that everyone could have prosthetic coverage. So small.
Right. And even if they think about it, the other things you would cut costs on, like on leaving people more disabled, needing to rely even more on all these other things and having more subsequent issues for not being up and staying healthy, you know. That's why I'm
Yeah.
so curious what's holding them back, or do they just have too many other things on their to-do list as far as like, you know, I don't know. It's just like I don't know if and that's where again, because I don't know anything about like the political world, but if it's just a matter, like you said, of people, writing, is it just people being loud enough about it to like, oh,
Yeah.
more people than just some of these people care about this? Because I
Yeah.
think when anybody hears stuff, their mind, and just the awareness, which is one thing about why I wanted to like have you on this podcast, is just making people aware. People don't just get stuff. Like
Yeah.
children just don't get stuff. They are just expected to, well, I know you'd love to go run on the playground with everyone, but sorry, you know.
Listen, this is the most insane thing that encapsulates the how absurd this stuff is. I spoke to a mom whose son wanted to run, who didn't have the financial ability to pay for this running blade. She said, the week before I found your foundation, I put my house up on the market to sell it to pay for my son's leg to run.
Well,
And you like, you hear that and like the real human element of it hits you and you go, holy cow. But the reality is like there aren't that many amputees in the United States, of which kids are a very small population. So it only affects a really small population. So there aren't a lot of people that make a lot of noise about it, because it just doesn't impact that many people. The flip side of that is very easily, since it's such a small population, then why don't we ensure that they have good access?
Right.
Because it's exactly what you're saying, is like a prosthetic device. There's nothing more significant in a child's life to prevent developing further health implications down the line than a prosthetic device.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing. So it's a cost savings measure, but they don't see it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, also tell everybody about some of your keystone events that you do every year, and I'm sure they can find schedules and stuff on your website as well. But tell them kind of when those kind of are. I know you just had one, your big golf tournament.
Yeah.
I know a ton of golfers. I'm gonna tell my brother he needs to join the next time. He loves playing in golf tournaments, all that stuff. So he would totally be in. But yeah, so tell people some of your flagship ones, because I don't know if any are coming around the turn of the year at all, or just so people can have their ears out.
Yeah, so every fall, usually about October, September, October, golf is a huge passion of mine. So we have naturally just a fundraising event. It's a golf tournament here in Nashville. And then I mean, it's developed so much. Like we had a cornhole tournament this year
That was
that
fun.
you were there repping, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah. That
You
was
there?
fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like we have all these really kind of small micro things that have started to pop up that are just a lot of fun. We have a family that hosts a 5K in Columbia, South Carolina, in the summertime, which is amazing. We have a family reunion here in Nashville in July. So we don't have a ton of like massive events for donors and whatnot, but we are more focused kind of like on events for our kiddos and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if anybody's interested, we can certainly find a way to get you involved and get you in front of kiddos and see the work that we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, just a few more questions. There was one thing I was curious about. Again, going back to where maybe you started this whole thing, and it's just so cool how just taking the baby steps, you could end up places you never imagined. You've received multiple really cool awards, like the CNN Hero Award, National Courage Award,
Mhm.
Ellis Island Medal of Honor, Changing the World for being an outstanding youth, all this stuff. What was it like to then like be on those stages with these other people who you've seen on the TV before and be like, wow, I'm here? And what was that just kind of experience like?
Yeah, I tried to soak it up as much as I could, right? Like, it's just major imposter syndrome. You just sort of you're up there and you're like, I'm a top 10 CNN hero, like for what? Like, and you hear these stories of the other 9 people that are in your like class of, like, I do not need to be here, but that's my own stuff, right? But it's incredible. I mean, it's like I was gonna run lines the night before the presentation, and like Pierce Brosnan was like, "Hey, can I jump in here real quick?" And you're like, "Yeah, dude, you're 007, dude. You're James Bond. Of course
Yeah.
you'd hop in." Like, so yeah, it was really great. I mean, and it's fun. Like, it's fun again to like celebrate this stuff. It's fun to get acknowledgement. I think those of us that do this kind of work it's very easy to lose sight of like the magnitude and the impact of what it is that we do because we're in it every day. So it's just chop wood, carry water every day. And so like to
Mhm.
have the opportunity to kind of just sort of step back and have your own level of awareness around it is incredible. And it helps the foundation. Like anytime I have the opportunity
Mhm.
to tell the story about JTF, it's huge. So like being here with you is incredible because it's get to share the story of our kids more.
Mhm. Well, and I think it's cool for people to hear like that people say on those stages feel that imposter syndrome, because that's what I then just one of the points of this podcast is it's for listeners who want to do something extraordinary. They feel called to do something extraordinary, to not just live the average life and to make an impact in whatever way that feels right to them. And so that is one of those stumbling blocks that people come into, like, why me?
Oh yeah,
But to flip the script and be, why not you? And to know too, when you're on that stage, though, all those same people, and I'm sure even the Pierce Brosnans and whoever, when they really get into deep talks, like, have all felt that way.
totally. I guarantee it.
you know?
Guarantee it.
Yeah.
Everybody's yeah. But I love that. I love flipping it. It is the like it's why not me? Like
Hmm.
why who am I not to go out and do things that are amazing to change the world? Whatever that looks like to people. I never, obviously never started this thing to be on CNN, but it's like our capacity to do amazing things is far greater than we give ourselves credit for,
Hmm.
you know? And it's, again, like that's that gift coming back full circle to what we first started talking about, is that idea of my life has turned out the way that it has because of one singular event that formed so much of my life. But like, what an absolute gift that's like really revealed my capacity as a human to like show me what it is I'm capable of doing and what it is I want to be doing. Like, I get to do this and it's incredible. I don't go to a 9 to 5 job. Like, sorry, hate it. Like, people are listening, they're like, this guy sucks because I've got a 9 to 5. That's cool. But like, be extraordinary within that. Like, go
Right.
dominate that space.
Hmm.
And just as long as it fills you up. That's why I love this so much. It's like, it doesn't feel like work and it fills me up. And yeah, I encourage everybody to challenge that inner voice that says you don't belong here, because that's
Hmm.
nonsense. It's
Yes,
lies.
totally. Well, where can everybody find you and follow you and your foundation?
Yeah, Jordan Thomas Foundation on the gram,
Mhm.
and then jordanthomasfoundation.org. Google Jordan Thomas Foundation.
Yeah.
You'll
Yeah.
find all of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, so the last question that I love asking everyone, it's kind of neat to hear everybody's different takes on this one, but what does living an abundant life mean to you? And if someone were to ask you how they could start to build an abundant life for themselves, what would you tell them?
Start now. Um, Believing yourself. Living an abundant life to me is about living in a place of fulfillment and purpose and meaning, and doing something that you feel that you're called to do or that you're put on this earth to do. If I've learned anything, it's how precious this life is, because I was right at the cusp, and I felt the presence of death, and to be here is such a gift. And so I get to maximize that. This thing is a gift. I get to be in a place of gratitude to say, man, I may not have gotten the foundation to where I want to be, or my personal life may not have gotten to the place where I want it to be, but today I've got a chance. At least I've got a fighting chance. So it's
Hmm.
about having a bit of gratitude, extending some grace to self, and saying, it's okay. It's okay to maybe not be okay. It's okay to not go hit a home run. But find that thing that fires you up and just go after it.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so, so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it. I've paused the recording.